Certain people see Jesus, certain people see Krishna, certain people see Muhammad, certain people see the Buddha. I had all of those teachings in my life, but I saw 1111. That was the thing that took me to Tanzania and got me to build a children's village and got me to become the guardian of over 100 children. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just God's method of getting in contact with you, getting your attention. And then the feathers on top of that as well, as I say. So synchronicity is a huge topic. But ultimately, it's the fabric of reality speaking to you. And the more quiet you are, the easier it can talk to you in all of those different ways. It can be a random synchronicity from what we perceive to be inanimate, a gust of wind carrying a feather. It can be a synchronicity from another human being. It can be that an angel held you up for one moment. You decided to do something.
Little love, you and I can change the world. Live a little love, make it better if we try. Show a little love, let your love.
Guys, so I made a video the other day about synchronicity and I took it down because I didn't feel I'd done the topic justice. So I want to talk about how the universe has been using synchronicity to heal me. It's used it in every other which shape or form in my life. It's used it to bring me to Tanzania. It's used it to help me to build the children's village, to build the Centre for the Street Involved Boys. And I've got a countless list of synchronicities which are documented in my life because I've used social media. For example, first time in my life I ever meet someone in Tanzania who was working with street children was 2 days after I opened my big centre. I had 2 children in the centre, which if you follow the story you'll understand why. And by chance I bumped into a guy, and within 10 minutes of meeting him we're out collecting another 12 street boys. This guy's name is Modest and he lived on the street himself. So synchronicities played a huge role in my life, not to mention the numerical synchronicities which I'll talk about as well. But what is synchronicity? Well, many people will deem it to be the interaction of 4D, 5D reality coming in, which is a more modern new age way of talking about it. But synchronicity ultimately is God. That's what synchronicity is. It's God speaking to you by the means that he can. And more often than not, the thing that is used predominantly to create synchronicities in my life has been the force of that which I call the realm of the angelic. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, as I've always said, and I repeat myself persistently, an angel is a messenger of light. A photon is information traveling in a particle that travels upon an angle of light. They are the same thing in different terms. An angel and the angle of light and a photon, they are no different. The synchronicities I've had in my life, often the messages come from human beings at very profound timing, unbelievable profound timing. And I want to give you an example. When I first started getting sick with this problem with the pain in my legs, being so hard-headed, the personality type I have developed as well over the years in Tanzania is the sort of personality that pushes a little bit too hard. And that's what's made me sick. That is what's made me sick. And the personality, it's not something I like to use because personality derives from the word persona, which is the mask that we wear within our lives. But to function inside the material world, you do need your ego. As we know, it is our friend. But as I always say, we need to reconnect away from there into that silent space. And it's in that silent space behind your personality that you actually have an opportunity to become aware enough to see synchronicities happening. Many people will see a synchronicity and they'll say it's just a coincidence. But that's because they haven't bothered thinking since school when they were taught the word coincidence, what exactly is a coincidence? And what does that word mean to you? Just because it's sold to us as a grey happening within inside a split second of a moment that we think is the present moment, the very fragment of a second, it's not. A coincidence is something that happens in the present moment, and the present moment is an ever-eternal present thing. It's a vast expanseness of experience. So when all of that combines together to create that meaningful coincidence for you, then there's something more to it than just a chance happening in the split second of a moment. Now, as I mentioned, that personality type, I had a lot of pain in my legs, and I had guests over from England and Tanzania. This was back in January. I was with my wife in the house, and I never ever take painkillers. Now, if I was in the West, I might use something like cannabis oil, not THC, but CBD, the one that doesn't give you psychoactive issues, but the one that makes you relaxed and works with the largest receptory system in your body, the cannabinoid system. So I would use that as a painkiller anyway. However, in Tanzania, I didn't have access to that. So I had paracetamol there, and I'd never take them. I first of all believe it weakens our bodies, but I know how unhealthy they are for us. And I just put this paracetamol because I needed to get rid of the pain in my legs so I could carry on working. I literally put the paracetamol in my mouth, and my phone beeped, and I swallowed it. However, where I wish I hadn't, when I went to my phone, I had a Facebook message from someone, and the Facebook message was about the dangers of paracetamol. And these are the synchronicities in our life that guide us. And they're a beautiful thing because it tells us that synchronicities are not only there when we look for them or ask for them, but that means that there is a conscious, loving guardian watching our every movement. Now, you can call that God, a guardian angel, you can call that your higher self, you can call that angels, but you better believe it's watching. Otherwise, how do these things happen? Now, I'm not alone in that. Carl Jung coined the word synchronicity. He started that word. And one of his patients, he was working as a psychoanalyst at the time, his patient came in the office having a repetitive dream about a golden scarab beetle. And he couldn't get her to let go of her purely intellectual, zero aspect of any sort of wonder of life mindset, that everything was black and white and had to have perfect intellect logic, and it was crushing her. It was crushing her spirit. And there was a tap on the window during the session, and he opened the window, and a large golden and green scarab beetle flew in and landed on her. And that synchronicity, that meaningful coincidence, was enough for her to realize there's something divine. There's something more beyond the veil of the physical that I have been tuned into, and beyond this brain cycle I'm stuck in whilst looking at it and observing it and analysing it, that is beautiful and deep. And that helped her transcend her problems and come into an open, more loving spiritual space. As I say, those who don't believe in magic never find it. And when you look to the world with that twinkling eye, to steal the words of Roald Dahl, then you do find that magic. But without that twinkling eye, depression and things can really get a hold of us as human beings. So that was one synchronicity that happened with myself. Now, I can also call upon God to create synchronicities to answer prayers. I've done this and I do this. For instance, I was dry fasting the other day in preparation to clean myself for this longer fast. I've had nothing but raw foods and dry fast. I'm on a long fast at the moment. And I said to God, I asked for a very obscure sign. I said, I'll drink water when you give me that obscure sign. Just because, not to test God, but to say, I'm not quite sure how long to take this, and you know better than me. And that obscure sign came. Within 20 minutes, just came like that. And I said, thank you. Thank you for the comfort it brings, and thank you for the guidance at the same time. Now, that's not a synchronicity that you're not expecting. That's one that you call upon. That's what I call laying down a fleece. As the story in the Bible goes, you put a fleece down, and if the floor is wet and the fleece is dry, then that's your sign from God, and you do it vice versa the next day, that's your sign from God. And I lay down fleeces nearly every day of my life, and God always answers with them in the most profound of ways. In the most profound of ways. And this is the answer of a prayer in a different way, but what I want to say is that sometimes when you do it that way, or sometimes when you need to wake up from something, the creator of the synchronicity in my life is not always inanimate. Sometimes it is, as we would call inanimate. For instance, my feathers, etc., which I'll get onto. But sometimes it's people. And when it's people, then those feathers come, those thoughts come guiding along from the people into your life to make all of a sudden you see something that you need to see for your progression and your growth on your spiritual path. But where does the thought come from in the person? Well, it comes from them accepting an angle of light with a photon in it, which goes into their brain and guides them and just gets them to do something. It comes from an angel. It comes from that realm of the angelic. Now, I also get my feathers, as I mentioned, in the logo for my charity is the child blowing the feather. The children's village is called Feathers Tale. This happens because I always get feathers. I can ask for a feather as a sign. I can say, you know, are you around? Can I get something, a sign? And a white feather will come a few hours later and float past me in a way you can't believe. And the first child I ever helped in Tanzania, the guy telling me, didn't know anything about the feathers, but while he was telling me, a feather blew over my shoulder, span around in front of us like this and blew off. And he stopped talking and said, what was that about? And I said, feathers from heaven. And again, I'm not alone in that. I've seen many Christian speakers on stage, for example, have feathers float down or speak about how feathers appear. As it says in Psalms, will cover you with your feathers. But think of the synchronicity of somehow, supposedly, a complete chance universe managing to concoct that synchronicity. That, for instance, I remember when I lost a loved one, someone who I loved dearly passed away. And I was walking along and a white feather came blowing towards me and stuck to the end of my shoe in the wind. It got stuck on the end of my shoe. 5 minutes later, I got the phone call to say that person had passed away, but I knew when the feather hit me what it was. I knew why it was there. It was to say, the news is coming that they've gone, but we're here. Don't forget that we are here. Now, I've had other types of synchronicities as well. And last year, sadly, 3 children died who I'm guardian to last year out in Tanzania, which wasn't pleasant. But one child was Emmanuel. And my wife and I returned home 10:30 at night. 10:30 at night, there were 8 butterflies inside our house floating around. Never seen it before, never seen it since. This was the day after he died. And it brought a huge comfort to me because I knew what it was. And this is the synchronicity. This is the world of synchronicity that I've lived within. Now, how does that work for you? How does that, hearing my stories of synchronicity, I could just be talking nonsense. How does it work for you? Well, first of all, you've got to tune into it. If you're a skeptic and you're saying, why doesn't it happen to me? It doesn't happen to you because you don't allow it to happen to you. It can happen to all of us, but you've got a duty and a job. And the duty and job is to take no thought for your life. And the less thought you take for your life and the more you live from the space of love and emotion, the more synchronicities the world will produce for you. It's as simple as that. God will guide you on your path. I went to Tanzania after following numerical synchronicities. And I get numerical synchronicities still in my life. And I can even use them. Just as I say I lay down a fleece, the numbers will come when I ask as a sign or sometimes when I don't to warn me of things. And this is a fabric of reality. Now, just as in the ancient times, they had things like the Native Americans had certain signs from animals. They would say it's a sign from spirit when a bird flies by. Again, something I receive as well, still to this day. Depending on where I am, I know what signs God will use to communicate with me. Sometimes it'll even be a voice in my head, a dream, whatever it might be. But the synchronicity of an animal passing at a certain time when you're thinking about something can awaken something in you. Now, they had certain signs in ancient Greek cultures of if you saw a bird carrying a serpent, for example. The Bible itself, for those Christian among you, tells you to ask for your signs from God and he will give you them. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're not putting God to the test, you're asking for guidance. You're surrendering in faith to him. Now, many people say that you are deceived by these numbers, but what you should remember is in a reality right now where you're surrounded by the concept of numbers and the digital reality around you, what better way to communicate with you? What better way? And that is shown in my life, that because of a repetitive number sequence that kept showing up in my life, I went to Tanzania because I didn't see it just as a number. I knew it was God. You know, I knew it was God. Certain people see Jesus, certain people see Krishna, certain people see Muhammad, certain people see the Buddha. I had all of those teachings in my life, but I saw 1111. That was the thing that took me to Tanzania and got me to build a children's village and got me to become the guardian of over 100 children. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just God's method of getting in contact with you, getting your attention. And then the feathers on top of that as well, as I say. So synchronicity is a huge topic. But ultimately, it's the fabric of reality speaking to you. And the more quiet you are, the easier it can talk to you in all of those different ways. It can be a random synchronicity from what we perceive to be inanimate, a gust of wind carrying a feather. It can be a synchronicity from another human being. It can be that an angel held you up for one moment. You decided to do something. Now let me tell you one last little story, how I know how that can be. When I was 17 years old, I was in a quite bad car crash. A lamppost hit the passenger door of the car. I'm in England, so the passenger door's on the left. And the lamppost came into the car. Just before we lost control, my friend had passed his driving test 12 hours before in the morning, would you believe? I don't know if he watches my videos still, but if he does, he'll know who he is. And the lamppost came into the car, and when the lamppost stopped, it was touching the hair on my head. That's how close my head was to hitting this lamppost at very high speed. It came through into the car. Just before I got to the bridge, I got an overwhelming urge, before I got to the bridge where we crashed, to pull the lever on my seat and drop the seat back. Had I not pulled it, I could have died, because the lamppost would have likely hit me here in the temple. But I lived to see another day, and back then I said, what are the chances of that? Chance. What a coincidence. How lucky. Now I'm wiser, and I'm older, and I'm longer in the tooth, as they would say. And I know that that was a whisper. With all of the might, which was a very noisy carnal mind back then, that was not the whisper, but probably the yelling to get through to me of the angelic realm, which creates what looks like a synchronicity. So you can call that type of coincidence just a message from God. The other synchronicities I see in my life are things that lead me towards growth. I'll turn a corner and something will happen. I meet the right person at the right time and it defies mathematical possibility. I read the right thing at the right time. I hear from the right person just after thinking about them. I see the correct even YouTube video just at the right time. All of these things can happen to teach me. All of these things can happen because they allow me to progress, and it's the realm by which God wants to communicate with us. It's the most common modality of communication from God to us humans is the wonderful world, a world of synchronicity. And there's nothing scary about it. It's perfectly normal. And many people are terrified because they want their God to exist only in a book. But I say, get the instructions of that book and follow them. And when you do and take no thought for your life, you'll enter a world of synchronicity. And as they happen and they lovingly guide you to produce good fruits in the name of God, in the name of Christ, or Muhammad, or Buddha, or Krishna, or whoever, whichever positive deity, or whichever positive Messiah or prophet it is that you adhere to the positive side of their teachings, you will begin to understand that these are a good thing and we need more of them in our lives. And we should even be teaching our children the skill of accessing that dimension of reality, as it were. For in synchronicity is some of the closest times I've had with God. And right now God is using it in my life to heal me. And that's why I know I will be healed. As long as I don't think, as long as I don't think I know best, as long as I listen to the synchronicities and follow the synchronicities from God, God will lead me to my healing. That is what will happen. That is what is happening. And I can't fail to heal so long as I can make my mind quiet enough to always be open to the whispers of those photons or those angels, or always be open to the turning of the right corner at the right time, so as God can pass me that message to put me on to the next step towards my healing. And it's all about having absolute faith in God. You don't have to see the whole staircase, take the first step. That basically says, have faith. And when you know what is guiding you up those steps in the dark, why would you be in any which way, shape or form worried? And that's why I'm not. Because in Synchronicity, I have a very wonderful part of my relationship of service to others, service to God, and service to the teachings of all of the greats, but in particular in my life, Christ, and the teachings of love and humility where possible, which is a difficult task. Probably the most difficult of all, morality, charity to others. And as long as I'm going to live out my life in this way, I will always need the guidance of God and his numbers and his feathers, and I'll lay down my fleeces and ask for signs, and the dreams and everything else in between, and the nature and the wildlife. And so long as I have that, I'll always know that my God is close. And the more of us access that, the more of us will realise that my God and your God are no different. So your God is close to you too. Always. It's just sometimes this is a little bit too loud to be able to realise it. And that's always number one job. Make that quiet. Empty yourself so you can fill yourself with the love of God. And that faith will grow and grow with every passing positive synchronicity. God bless, guys. Bye. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, as it really helps us to grow the channel and with it help more children here in Tanzania. Also, don't forget you can support our work by sharing with children in crisis here, be it sharing for a particular need or even sharing one-on-one support for education, housing, food and medical care. It can be done for as little as the cost of a cup of coffee a week back in the West after all. Just visit www.sharetanzania.co.uk to find out more. Lastly, remember you can also support us via Patreon, www.patreon.com/featherstail, and help keep us here in Tanzania to continue our work. The links for the website and for the Patreon are in the description box of this video. Love and light, guys. See you soon.